Welcome to Mind Time with Madison, everybody. Today we have an incredible guest, Jenny Jaffe, and
Hi.
Jenny is just an amazing young woman. In your own words, Jenny, how would you like to introduce yourself to our audience?
I'm Jenny. I am the founder of Project UROK. I'm a writer. I love that you called me young. That was very exciting. And yeah, I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you so much, Jenny, and it's been such an honor learning more about Jenny, guys. Like, if you don't know much about her, you have to search her up online because she's pretty incredible.
Thank you.
She's a very talented writer. She was like a wonder kid and still continues to be just amazingly talented, but also giving back in such a beautiful way, which we're going to learn today. So to kick off, learning more about Jenny, for you, Jenny, what was your attitude like towards mental health as a teenager, and what would you say has changed since then?
I think as a teenager, I struggled so much with my mental health when I was growing up because I have OCD and I have generalized anxiety disorder and panic disorder. And I think that I was very bitter towards my mental health for a long time because I felt like it was sort of robbing me of a normal youth experience. I spent just so much of my childhood and teen years dealing with it and learning how to deal with it and learning that it was going to be a lifelong struggle, unfortunately. And I think that I really just wanted to feel like there was another side, like that I would like just come out the other side and wouldn't be still in this mindset forever. It was really difficult to wake up and not sort of know like how I was going to get through the day. And I am, I think I now have come to realize like these are things that you struggle with for a lifetime. And somebody recently said to me very brilliantly that she thinks of her mental health like allergies. Like she knows that sometimes it's going to flare up and sometimes it's not, but it's not going to, she knows how to manage it. And I was like, I really like that metaphor.
I love that.
Yeah, because it's a chronic illness, which is a sort of dark way to put it maybe, but that is what it is. And I think my attitude has shifted a lot from my personal mental health just to sort of a place of I know how to deal with it. I have complete faith in myself to get through whatever comes my way, and that's a really great way to feel, because I think when you're first starting to go through anything like that, you don't have the experience of making it through. And once you know you can do it, it becomes a lot easier. Another person kind of early on in the UROK process said that they don't feel like it necessarily gets easier, you just get better at dealing with it. And I think that's another great way to think about it. And then the other thing that sort of changed is my view of mental health and mental health care on a global scale. I think that you have to put your safety mask on before helping others with these things, and I had to get to a place where I was doing well enough that I could be thinking about sort of the broader implications of mental illness. But I was really fortunate. I have a tremendous amount of privilege in that I had the financial and social capital to seek therapy, and unfortunately in the U.S. that's not something that is provided as part of most healthcare plans. It's not something that there are readily available options for, because I don't think that as a society we see it as being as important as physical health. And it's very we almost don't totally see physical health as a universal right. So I think it's a lot of my perspective has shifted in terms of like, okay, so now I've been given this amazing opportunity, like because of the support I had from my family, because of the fact that I was able to get into therapy and get on medication, I was able to survive some pretty difficult stuff. How do I then help shift the paradigm so that other people have those same opportunities? And so I think that's sort of like been the biggest shifts for me.
That's amazing. And your story's so inspiring too. For those of you who are watching, Jenny has a video on Project UROK that she's the CEO of, if I'm correct.
I'm the founder of Project UROK. I founded it, but in 2016 it was acquired by the Child Mind Institute. So I'm no longer involved in the day-to-day operations. It's run by some really fantastic people out of this really awesome organization, and I'm just like super grateful that it keeps going. I think now my title is just founder, and I'm chair of the advisory board.
That's incredible, and Jenny's in so many of their videos, and I just love the safe space that's there, and the vulnerability that you share, Jenny, is just
thank you.
No other. It's just amazing.
Thank you.
So you guys feel free to check out those videos with Jenny and a bunch of other amazing people talking about mental health. And to continue, what was how did you feel in your teen years? Tell us what that was like.
Oh man, that's a dark question. No, my mental health stuff, my diagnoses started kicking in when I was really young. Like, since I can remember, I've always had issues with very severe anxiety. The first time I remember getting like what I would describe as a full-blown panic attack, I was 15, I think. And that just shifted everything for me. And, you know, people throw the phrase panic attack around, but like if you've had one, it is like, I've heard a theory that you really only ever have one panic attack, and then every other panic attack you have is a ripple effect of you being afraid of having a panic attack, which is crazy and tells you how powerful these things are. It feels like dying. Like, that's what it is. I think that it's just your body tells you that you're dying, and it's that panic. And it, you know, just trying to exist as a normal teenager after that was hard. I was having like more or less constant panic attacks. I remember taking like 3 Ativan a day on top of my meds just to try and sort of like stem the tide of that and make it through classes. It was just a struggle. It was just moment to moment, and I got really suicidal because I was like, this is going to be my life. I don't know that I want to live it. And I think that's a very common way for people who deal with these kinds of things to feel, is just that, you know, I felt like I was in a constant fight with myself, and it's exhausting to feel that way. It was more or less like catatonic for a large part of high school, and I'm super lucky that I had my family's support. I kind of can't imagine what would have happened if I didn't, and there are a lot of kids out there who deal with that and don't have their family support, or you know, don't have anybody that can tell that they're feeling that way. And it was just terrible. And I think that the upshot of that is no matter how, you know, if I have a panic attack now, or if I go through a particularly rough patch with my OCD now, which sometimes happens and it comes up stress or, you know, whatever, it brings it up, I know I can get through it. I know how to handle it. I, you know, in some ways was lucky to have dealt with all this when I was living at home and had that family support. So, you know, nobody wants to go through that, but I guess I did have the best possible circumstances for it. Yeah, I mean, that's the only way to describe it. A lot of it, like, it's truly stuff I've tried to go over in therapy and things, but there are sort of, I think, for anything traumatic that you go through, your brain sort of protects you in a lot of ways, and there are missing parts of that for me. Like, I couldn't tell you in a linear way about really what happened. It's just that I just remember what a struggle it was. So, yeah. I mean, it was a lot of in and out of doctor's appointments and trying to get on top of it. And it was really hard. It was a really hard time.
Yeah. And I, just thank you for just what you've been through and what you've done with what you've been through, Jenny, is just amazing. And I'm grateful to know you and to be able to share you with teens, honestly, because it's just, I would never know if I met you and I didn't know a thing about you. I would not know that you had OCD, that you were going through all these things, let alone you were in such a dark place.
I mean, I think that's why it's important to talk about it, though, right? Because, I think even when I look at my life sometimes now, and I think that everybody puts forward their accomplishments and they sort of put their best foot forward and stuff. And I know what it feels like on a day-to-day basis, and I know what I went through to get here and everything. And that I think it's important to share all that too, because otherwise people just think, well, what's wrong with me if I'm not there? And I'm like, nobody is. I think once I started being kind of open about this, it was amazing the people who came out of the woodwork to tell me about things they were going through, because you just never know what somebody else is going through. And everybody's going through something. It's life. So, when you open up about yourself, though, you're creating space for other people to be able to open up to you as well. And I think that's super important.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh wow. And yeah, I totally agree. And I feel like what do you think our listeners could do to help support people who are suffering with mental illness, and how do you see the online space maybe playing a negative and positive role in that?
I mean, I think that there is some rightful criticism or concern about the role that social media and that sort of what I was talking about, sort of the pressure to sort of idealize your life, like Instagram typifies that, obviously. I think that there's also a danger in demonizing it, though, because especially if we're talking about teen mental health, we're going to be fighting an uphill battle. The internet is not going anywhere. Social media is not going anywhere. What can we do to carve out spaces in that to utilize the best properties of it and try and provide conversations for teenagers where they are, and not ask them to relearn, not ask them to come to where we are. That's not going to happen. Go to where they are. And
so smart.
That was a big part of what was important about UROK to me. It was also seeing that teenagers were already doing this. They already had, at the time, I mean, this was 5 years ago, and the internet moves very quickly, but Tumblr was a place that a lot of teenagers were creating communities for themselves. I think that teens naturally are very good at creating communities for themselves online. And I mean, I think my generation, I'm 29, and I would consider myself an internet native, but even so, social media, the way it exists now, didn't exist until I was in high school. So I have a very different relationship to it, even than somebody who's 10 years younger than me does. God, 15 years younger than me. It's a different world. I think that people have been naturally sort of doing this anyway. And I think that the important thing to do is, how can we as advocates and as mental health professionals, I'm not, but I have been lucky to work with a lot of wonderful mental health professionals, how can we best utilize the tools that already exist and try and create these conversations. And then in terms of in everyone's own life, I think the only thing you can do is try and be as honest as you can with the people around you. I think that makes such a huge difference. It makes your friendships and relationships that much deeper. I mean, it's just communication, right? But it's like it's a scary thing because it's vulnerable, and nobody really wants to be vulnerable. But once you start speaking honestly about how you're doing, people have the space to do that with you, and I think that creates a very nice community that can happen. I definitely have felt the change, felt the shift in the world around me since I've started being a lot more open. Also, the other thing though is that I am very, very lucky that I have a job where I can talk about that and not worry about keeping my job, and I have a community that's not going to sort of shun me for talking about it. So it also does all come from this place of privilege, but if you have that privilege, I do think you sort of have an obligation really to use it and try and create openness where you can. It's also for me personally, it's been really nice, because the OCD thing is just so out there now, and if you Google me, I'm pretty sure it's the first thing that comes up is an article where I talk about it, and there's a textbook, I swear to God, that exists, and it's under OCD, it's me, this Psychology 101 textbook. I'm that's truly my favorite accomplishment of mine so far. So because I'm so open about it, if I'm having kind of a day where I'm feeling particularly anxious, or I feel like I'm really obsessing about something, I can say that to the people around me, and I think that's been really helpful, because otherwise you're just trying to push through something when maybe you don't need to push through it. Maybe there's another way you can work through it with people. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. So many aha moments, but I love how you said just being honest. I feel like we tend to overcomplicate the conversation sometimes. I'm just speaking from my experience and what I've done. And just what you said, just be honest. And that's so terrifying, but...
Well, I think there's a... When it came to doing UROK and stuff, the reason that it's videos that are sort of first person videos is because you can't be wrong when you're telling your own story from your own experience. And I think that we run into a lot of trouble when we try to tell other people's stories. Mental illness is something that's so personal. It's something that happens across intersections. There's it's such a personal experience, and it's experience. Even if the diagnosis is the same, it's a very personal experience based on so many other factors. So the only thing that I want to do is provide the space for people to tell their own stories, and I think that's the most effective thing we can do. There isn't one story of getting through OCD. There's just the way it worked for me, in particular, the person that I am. It's so individual. So I think making sure that there are at least as many stories out there as possible is great, because then anybody who's going to the site, or anybody who's trying to see their story reflected, can at least find something that either speaks to them, or they'll find snippets of a bunch of different stories that resonate. But yeah, I think it's just important to have that first person perspective. Otherwise, I think that this conversation can exist sort of in the abstract, and I think that's I have sort of a problem with that, because it's not something that's abstract. I think it's great that there are these sort of resources where it's if you are dealing with this thing, here is where you can get help. But it's very different if you're I dealt with this thing, here's what I did, maybe it'll work for you. I think that's just a lot more powerful. And also makes people feel like they can be a part of that conversation, because it's not happening with people who are removed from it. It's happening with people who live with it.
Wow. Yeah, and that would then also help with the isolation factor that you've shared a lot about.
Yeah,
that you're okay.
I mean, that's, I think, the hugest thing is just that if you're in a situation where you feel like you can't talk about something, you do feel sort of isolated. And I think that that can be one of the most painful parts of the whole thing, is that you feel like you're missing out on a community. And if you're not in a physical community where you can express this and find people you relate to, it's really important to have an online community.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. And it's just, like you said, like it's great that just meeting kids where they're at, right? Meeting people where they're at with the online space.
Yeah,
genius,
exactly.
Mrs. Jenny. You're genius.
Thank you.
So when you were a teen, talking about, you know, sharing and not isolating, was there anything that held you back from talking about your struggles as a teenager, and how did you overcome that?
I think when I was, like, really young, when I was, like, 10, I've talked about this publicly, but that was, like, the first time I ever had, like, suicidal thoughts, and I just did not know what they were or how to talk about them. Mm-hmm. And I remember feeling like I just sort of wished that an accident would happen and, like, a car would hit me or something, and then I wouldn't have to do anything, and my parents wouldn't have to feel like it was their fault or anything like that. And so I didn't know how to talk about that. I was just too young. I just didn't have the language, and it was just really scary to go through. And then when I was a teenager, I think the bigger thing, like, because at that point I sort of had my parents' support, and I had talked to them about it, and was able to talk about it on that level. I think the bigger thing was sort of the teenage thing of, like, I'm already sort of, like, nerdy, and kids can smell fear on you, and, you know, I got bullied a lot, and I think that it was just, why would I want to, you know, aggravate that? Like, why would I give anybody more ammo? And
right.
Just not, like, and the assumption that I had, obviously, was I am the only person who's going through this, because that's what it feels like. Mm-hmm. Why would I make myself any weirder? Of course, come to find out many years later, and having connected with many of my classmates years on, I found out I was not the only person going through that. And I just, like, it was, but at the time it felt like, yeah, I'm not going to create more conflict for myself than I need to deal with right now. And it's not like I had, you know, I think that people were aware to some degree, like, at my school, like, the teachers and stuff, but yeah, I don't know what talking about it really would have looked like in an open way. I think that's just hard for teenagers. I think it is different now. I think that because teenagers are a lot more, like, confessional, and I think because everybody's more open, I think that things have shifted. But, you know, in high school in 2004 to 2008, I think it was a very different world.
Yeah. So, oh my gosh. And that's, like, the whole void aspect you mentioned, I think, we were talking before, and you said, like, you know, I go on the internet and it's like a void that I just go into and I can share, and it doesn't feel...
Yeah, I still feel that way. Yeah. And I like, forget, honestly, I said this at times, but, like, when I've been podcasts, I'm like, oh, I forget somebody's going to listen to this, and then I, like, just, I'll say stuff, and somebody will be like, oh, yeah, you said this thing, and I'll be like, oh, I completely blacked out.
That's
so
awesome.
I think that's also, like, I grew up in the town I grew up in, because I grew up in Silicon Valley, and there's a very high teen suicide rate there, and I think it's because there is a premium put on everything looking a certain way.
Mm.
And I think that it's very hard for the kids who grow up there, and it's a very high achieving place, and it's a place where everybody sort of wants to be perceived in a certain light, and, you know, mental illness will sort of, like, get in the way of things looking totally perfect. And I think, yeah, I don't know what it's like now, because I think a lot of good work has been done there, but it's a very specific and strange environment.
Wow.
And certainly it was a very strange environment in which to experience all of this.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. When did you discover comedy, and was it in your teen years as a young kid? Like, was that always there, and has it contributed to your mental health in any way?
Yeah, I mean, I've always loved comedy, and I don't even remember sort of when it first started becoming this active part of my life. I think, like, people, sometimes ascribe being funny to having struggled, and I think that's a mistake, because I think that starts to glamorize it, and I don't think that, I think it gives people sort of permission or makes people think that not treating their mental illness will help their creative process, and I have been there, and it doesn't work. Take care of your mental health, you'll still be funny. But I think that it was just always something that I gravitated towards, because I think that it's a huge, like, relief. I mean, people like entertainment because it provides a respite from the horror of being alive. And I think that comedy is sort of like the most direct way to do that. Comedy is sort of laughing in the face of death. And I think that just always really appealed to me. And so I remember, like, when I was, like, in middle school and high school, and, like, especially when I was really struggling, like, comedy was such a saving grace for me. I also felt, I just sort of voraciously watched it, and now I look back and I'm like, wow, that was, like, my best education, was just I have this huge playbook of comedy to pull from. But I think the other thing that I think really drew me to it is that a lot of my heroes are people like Maria Bamford and Stephen Fry, who were some of the first people I heard talk about mental illness in a way that really resonated with me, especially Maria Bamford, who has OCD. And I had just been diagnosed when I heard her first album, and it blew my mind, because I'd never heard somebody talk about the symptoms I was experiencing in this way, where it was, like, accessible and not scary and not totally diagnostic. It was explaining experience, which was so cool to hear, and to know that she was, and she's also been amazing in an ongoing way, where she was, like, really open about being hospitalized later in her career, and it's so cool and important to have people like that. And the other thing is, I was like, wow, like, she can do this thing, like, this might be a space where I could carve out a place for myself as well. And so I think I was just always really drawn to that. I wanted to, give back to people the sort of, like, relief that comedy has given me. And then You Are Okay became the more direct way to do that. But I'm really glad that I've sort of found my way back into the writing world, because I did take a break from it for about 2 years just to get You Are Okay off the ground. And but it all feels like it's part of the same mission, I think.
Well, that's fantastic. I love that so much, Jenny, and I agree.
Thank you.
I love what you said to us, like, comedy is just, like, laughing at death, like, you're just looking at it in the face, really, and it's an act of bravery, almost. Like, I have a lot of respect for comedians, because what you guys do is, like, I'm not naturally, like, funny, so
I don't know that I am.
I love people that are funny. I love it.
I don't know that I am either. I think I'm always, like, nervous that when I say I write comedy, people are going to expect me to be, like, funny in life, but especially because I do so much talking about this, I'm like, I don't know if I'm living up to this. I'm also not a stand-up. I can't do stand-up, and, like, don't totally consider myself a performer. But I mean, I think it's just been such an amazing lifesaver for me, and it's created so many amazing communities for me. And when I started You Are Okay, like, my friends from the comedy community were so supportive and so wanted to, like, help get it off the ground, and did videos and promoted it online, and it was, like, really some of the most amazing support.
That's incredible. That like, that's that's so great to hear that there's such an incredible support system, because that's amazing, really.
Thank you.
And on to comedy still. For career rejection, can you describe a time like when you were confronted with it, and like how did you deal with it, and was there anyone? Yeah.
Oh man, I mean, it in every industry, I think that people have. Can I swear on this?
Yeah. Yeah, it's fine.
Great. Really early on in my career, my first manager, when I was like 19 or something, I got rejected from something I wanted really badly, and I was crying about it. And she just said, "This is an industry for tough bitches." And I've just like had that like tattooed on my heart ever since. I'm like, yeah, okay, this is an industry for tough bitches. Like, it's entertainment is not messing around. It is a very, very difficult industry, and it's an uphill climb. And if I felt like I really could be doing anything else, I probably would be, because it would make life so much easier. But like, I mean, it's just constant. Like, I'm lucky that I'm at a moment in my career right now where it feels like a lot of doors are opening, and that's very exciting, and certainly feels like I've been in this very cool position where I've been working steadily for a long time now. But I mean, I also know that's not going to last. I think it's like with knowing the mental health stuff, knowing that it's not going to, it's going to go up and down. I think you just have to ride these sort of waves. My mom always says it's like a carousel. It says your horse is up and sometimes down, and most of the time you're just in that like one like chair that you can just sit in, and it's like, why would anybody pick just the chair? And I think like there have been some like crying on the bathroom floor type of nights, and I thought when You Were Okay was happening, I was never going to get back into writing. I got my foot in the door once, and it's out now, and I don't know what I'm going to do.
Wow.
It's really, really tough. And so I think you just kind of have to hold on to the highs. And the hardest thing for me is the eyes on your own paper thing. It's just not trying to look around at what other people are doing and be like, oh man, like, should I be doing that? Or, why did they like get this opportunity? There's definitely jealousy that comes up where you're like, you kind of have to let go of that, and that's really hard. It's so much easier said than done, I think. Yeah. I put a ton of pressure on myself in my career, and that's still something I really, really struggle with. It's just that especially because like I had some success at a young age, I feel a lot of pressure to keep up with that. But like at some point you catch up to yourself, and I think that I think that scares me on some level. I think, after I was, my contract wasn't renewed at the first writing job I ever had, and that's fairly typical, but it was very devastating at the time. And I was just like, what? I don't know how to define myself, if not as a person who is working and constantly high achieving in their career. And I just went through a period where I was out for all these jobs and just didn't get any of them, and I was like, that's the only quality about myself I believe in, because I was so, like, because of all the years of anxiety and everything, like, I just sort of didn't have a lot of confidence in the other parts of me, and I think that that's been very important, is being like, no, like, I bring other qualities to the table. I'm not just a hard worker. I'm also a good person, and it was just hard for me to believe that that was true or relevant. And I think when you're dealing with something like what I was dealing with, I just felt like I want to believe I'm bringing something to the table, because I almost felt like, well, I'm so, what else could I possibly be bringing to the table if not work ethic? Because it's so, hard to be around me, or whatever I believed about myself because of it. And I was like, I actually think that might be a lie I've been telling myself.
Wow.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, I think every career has that. I only know from experience about careers in entertainment, but at least in entertainment, there is no one I know who hasn't been through just the ringer with rejection. And I think you get better about it. Like, it used to be something that would bother me, and now it's like you get bad news. Like, I don't, like, sure, okay. Like, but I mean, on the same token, I also get, like, good news, and I'm like, well, we'll see. Because, like, everything falls apart. Things fall apart. Nothing's certain. Somebody once told me nothing's certain until you can own it on DVD, and I'm like, yeah, you're right. Like, I've had projects get so close, just get shelved, and it's hard because I don't want to let myself get too excited either, and I don't want to lose that joy, and I don't want to lose the sense of I'm writing because I enjoy writing. And I think sometimes you're like, wow, I've really monetized the thing I love the most, and that can be risky. Because it's the thing you love the most.
It's so true, and you're putting yourself on the line in so many ways. Like, just it's amazing what you've done with, like, you to me are such a solid person because you've been through so much. Like, you know, at such a young age, like personally, professionally. That you're a great role model for what's possible, going after what you love. Like, it's so scary and risky to do that, and you're just, like, you're Jenny Jaffe. You're just got this great personality.
Oh, damn, that's so, thank you.
No, it's my pleasure. It's really, like, I think you're an amazing person, and you're definitely a hard worker with not just your career, but getting your mental health together. But your personality is awesome. Like, you're the kind of person that I'm like,
hi.
No, really. Like,
I don't even know how I'm bad at taking compliments. But thank you.
Thank you, girl.
I'm trying to just say thank you and not you know, immediately say no. Like, I really appreciate that. Thank you so much for talking with me. This was great.
Yeah, so it's just been a blast, and I could continue asking you so many questions.
Totally.
So we might need to do another one at some other point.
I would be fine with that. Sure.
Yeah, I would love to.
I'll have not dressed like a minion, which I've noticed.
No, I love
over the course of this.
No, I love it. I love overalls, and I love your outfit. And Jenny's hair is naturally red. Before the interview, and she has naturally red, gorgeous hair. Anyway.
Thank you. Thank you.
Beautiful. So before we sign off, where can people find you online?
I'm at Jenny Jaffe on everything. There's probably the place I'm most active. And then I have a website. I don't totally use that much, but it's thejennyjaffe.com. And you can just find, like, my contact information stuff there. Amazing.
Yeah, Jenny's website. I love her website because she has a panda on her head.
Yeah. Thank you. Those pictures, it's like a drawing of a picture of me that was taken when I was 21, and I'm like, at some point I'm going to have to switch these out, but hopefully it's still like someone like me.
Oh, totally. Yeah, it's totally like you. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time, Jenny.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'll talk to you soon, I hope.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Talk to you very soon. Okay. Have an awesome day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.